Everybody, this is Dream, and today we're going to have a nice big slate for both DraftKings and FanDuel. We have a ton of games. I think we have 10 games in the slate. So we have a lot of games, and there's a ton of injuries. Before I get started, though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? So I'll do DraftKings, and then I'll do FanDuel right after it here on this video. You also see my core plays here on DraftKings. I'll get into those once I get to the injury report. So let's get an injury report for the Hawks. Capella is questionable. For the 76ers, Embiid and Tucker are questionable. Harden and Maxey remain out. For the Wizards, Kuzma and Hachimura are both questionable. For the Hornets, Ball, Hayward, and Smith Jr. are all out. For the Celtics, Tatum and Horford are questionable. For the Magic, Carter Jr., Suggs, Bamba, Harris, Ross, and Okeke are all questionable. Anthony remains out. For the Nets, Curry is questionable. For the Cavs, Allen, Love, and LeVert are all questionable. For the Raptors, Siakam and Barnes are questionable. Achua and Porter are both out. For the Pelicans, Nance is questionable. Ingram is doubtful, and McCollum is out. For the Nuggets, Highland is questionable, and Porter Jr. is doubtful. For the Bulls, Caruso is questionable. For the Jazz, Markkanen is questionable and Conley is out. For the Suns, Chris Paul is out and Cam Johnson's out. For the Pacers, Nembhard and Duarte are both questionable. And for the Lakers, Beverly is out, LeBron is probable, and Davis is questionable. Alright, so obviously there's a ton of injuries today, which are going to make a difference as we get closer to slate. Lots and lots of questionable guys. So those are going to really change the battlefield here when it comes to choosing players and stuff. So I really have two core plays for now based on the information that we have that I feel like are going to be must plays regardless of whatever information we get. And that's Shake Milton and Zion Williamson here on DraftKings. I also have Jaylen Brown and Troy Murphy put down here. Now these two are both contingent on several things. So like Jaylen Brown is contingent on Tatum being out. And then Murphy is contingent on him starting specifically, which he does start sometimes, but he doesn't always. But with the injuries, he should have some more opportunity. And if he does start, then he'll be a good play here. But if he isn't starting, then that definitely lowers his value quite a bit. So that's kind of what I look at there. For Zion, he's going to be the top dog for the team, and he's going to be able to play max minutes and stuff like that. The question is if they're going to be able to keep a good game here, and they should be able to. Against the Thunder, and nobody on the Thunder is going to be able to stop him. So I expect him to have a really dominating game. And then for Shake Milton, his price has come up some, but his price is still pretty good for what he's been doing as a starter. And as long as Maxey and Harden are out, he's going to be somebody you got to take a look at. So anyway, let's get into the guards I do like today. We're going to start with Alvarado for New Orleans. He should be starting with McCollum out, but we do want to make certain that he is. And if that's the case, he should get a pretty good amount of minutes and have some upside in this game. However, his price has come up, so that does limit it. It doesn't make him a must play, but it does make him a good play. Seth Curry is another guy I like if he ends up playing, which he is questionable at this point. He has been extremely good and consistent, with the exception of a couple off games, where he's only had a few points. The problem with him is he tends to be very scoring dependent on his fantasy, but he has a lot of upside because his price is so cheap. Then we'll look at Zach LaVine, who's been really good for Chicago as of late, and his price has come down a little bit even, so that makes him a viable play on the slate, and a kind of tough matchup, but not the toughest. Then we'll look at Jaylen Brown, I already mentioned him, sorry. Tyrese Halliburton here for Indiana against the Lakers had some nice upside in this game. His price is still a little bit lower than I expected to get to. I do expect it to hit over 10,000 at some point, but it's remained right below it for most of the season. So I do like him here, and I think he's been pretty consistent and a good player. Then we'll look at Jamal Murray, who seems like he's starting to get better and better as the season progresses. He's also got a nice plus matchup here, and his price point is still good. And as long as he's playing over 30 some or so minutes, he's somebody that's viable on the slate. And then Colin Sexton, he's just too cheap for what he's been doing. He has some nice upside as a starter. his price has come up, but he has the upside due to being the starter with Conley out. And if anybody else is ruled out, that would also help him. So that's what I have at guards. Excuse me. At forward, we're going to start with Trey. I already mentioned Trey Murphy, sorry, and Zion. Denny Avdija for Washington. Now, he had a little bit of a letdown yesterday. He didn't play bad, but he didn't really get the rebounds that we had hoped. And so that led to a subpar game. However, he's had more good games than bad ones. And his minutes do fluctuate a little bit, but with injuries to Washington, he should still have plenty of minutes and plenty of upside. But do check to make sure he's going to be in there, close to the slot. Then Jared Vanderbilt, while he is extremely up and down, he'll have 35-point games or 15-point games. And it seems like it's almost every other game. Well, if it is every other game, then we should expect a good game here on this particular slate. And then DeMar DeRozan, he looks like a pretty solid play here against Utah. He's just been playing extremely well lately. His price point is pretty fair. And he's just been really good. So I think he's somebody to take a look at on the slate. Then we'll look at centers. Mason Plumlee looks like one of the safer plays on the slate. His price has come down some, and he is a little bit too cheap for what he's been doing this season. He obviously is capped because he is in a bit of a timeshare, but he still has upside in this matchup. Rudy Gobert is also just too cheap for what he's capable of, but he's been extremely inconsistent, and he is a frustrating player to roster this season, but he's got a nice positive matchup here, and I look for him to have a good game. And then Nicholas Claxton, he's been extremely good this season, and he's played really well with all the starters back and stuff for Brooklyn, so I expect that to continue here. So that's what I have on DraftKings. I think it's a really good slate. I think even though it's a pretty large slate, I think we'll be able to find some really quality lineups and have high-scoring game. With that said, let's get into the players on FanDuel. We're going to start with Jose Alvarado. His price point is obviously a little bit higher than I'd like, but he's still playing well, and as long as he starts, he's viable on this particular slate. DeAnthony Melton for Philadelphia. He's another guy that I think is priced a little bit too cheap over here on FanDuel. He's not priced too cheap on DraftKings, unfortunately, but with his role, he's going to have a lot of opportunity to score, and his price is just too good over here. Then we'll look at Jordan Clarkson for Utah. He's played really well. This is a tough matchup for him, but he's been extremely good lately, and so I look for that to continue in this game. And then Shake Milton, he's about the same price as he is on FanDuel or on DraftKings, and he should be able to pay off here as a starter and a plus matchup. Then we'll look at shooting guards, and we're going to look at Zach LaVine for Chicago. He's just been playing really well, and his price is a little bit too cheap for his potential in this game. Same can be said for Colin Sexton, just a little bit too cheap for what he can do here as a starter against Chicago. And then Jamal Murray, who's just been, his minutes have kind of come up, and he's playing extremely well in the games he does play. Obviously he doesn't play every game, but he has a lot of upside as long as he's playing 35 minutes. Then for the small forwards, we're going to look at Trey Murphy for New Orleans. His price is too cheap if he ends up starting. We do want to make sure that he's a starter, and he should play about 25 to 30 minutes. But if that's the case, he's definitely in play today. Denny Avdija for Washington. Sorry for butchering your name again. His price is pretty good for what he can do here. He should have some upside in this matchup, and despite the last game, he should play well in this one as long as he's getting the same amount of minutes. Tobias Harris with 34 needs 34 fantasy points to 5x, and he's been playing extremely good. With the last 4 games, he's played really well, and his price point is cheap enough here on FanDuel that he's a viable option on this particular slate. Then Jaylen Brown, obviously he's contingent on Jason Tatum being out, but if Tatum is out, then Brown definitely is in play on the slate. Zion is probably a top-tier option for the Pelicans with all the injuries to them. However, he's been very inconsistent, so you have to be in consideration of that, but he should get all the minutes he can handle in this one. Kelly Olynyk is a guy that I do like on the slate here on FanDuel because of his price and his upside and how good he's been playing lately. Same with Jared Vanderbilt, though he is up and down. His price point's slightly better here on FanDuel, where he has good upside, in at least half the games he plays. And then Al Horford, if he does play, his price is too cheap, but I don't really expect him to play. But if he does, he's definitely somebody to take a look at because he's played extremely well this season, especially as of late. At center, Nicholas Claxton is probably my top option here at his price point. He's played really solid with the starters, and I expect that to continue. And then a secondary option is Mason Plumlee for Charlotte, who's just been pretty consistent. He's not going to wow you with a like 50 fantasy point game, but he's going to get you what you need most nights, and that's what we like here on this particular slate. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.